Hello everybody, it's Hater. Welcome back to another Destiny build video, and I've yet again ascended to a whole other level, creating a build that can just outright defy logic. Because just 3 days ago, I released a build for the Titans, allowing them to hit the visual damage cap of 999,999. After that, I was reading through the comments, and one of them caught my eye saying, "Just wish Warlock or Hunter can make a build that is just as nasty." Immediately, that got me thinking, can Warlocks or Hunters do something similar? And yes, my friends, the Hunters can. So without further ado, guys, if you enjoy the build, leave a like on the video, leave a comment down in the comment section if there's anything you want to see me cover in the future, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already so you'll be up to date whenever a new build video goes out. But instantly, the moment that I read that comment, I was like, wait, the Hunters can with the Liar's Handshake. So I immediately dropped everything I was doing, ran to a Master Law sector, and tried the freeze combo on a champion. And well, yeah, it hit for over 500,000 damage, instantly killing the champion. Which, yes, this is very good. My only concern, however, with the idea of using it is having to punch something nearby to get cross counters started. On top of that, there's also not a huge amount of survivability trying to get up to said champion, especially in endgame content. That's where, after a bit of testing, I settled on the Assassin's Cowl helmet. Because what it does is whenever I get a kill with the empowered melee or finisher, it fully heals me and grants invisibility. Not only will this remove the need to have an extra enemy on standby for cross counter, but it also cranks the survivability of the build up to 11. Then there's the only downside of removing cross counter from the build. It drops the DPS from the previous 500,000 down to 350,000. Here's the kicker. It doesn't even matter. The Wombo combo still one-shots champions in Master Law Sector difficulty. You can still use Liar's Handshake for your build. It just depends on if you're going to be using that build for bosses like the Ogre or Final Boss and Grasp of Avarice. It just feels really inconsistent for me going from one ad to the next to get the proper DPS instead of coming out of Invis and immediately doing it. Moving over to the mods that make the build though, we're going to be using a very simple mod combination of Elemental Wells and Charged with Light. The first mod we'll be using in the build is Melee Well Maker, so that getting kills with our melee ability, which will happen all the time, creates an Arc Elemental Well. Then to make that Arc Elemental Well do something, besides giving 10% energy to all of our abilities, we're going to use Well of Ions, allowing our next melee attack to deal 30% more damage for 10 seconds. And then we're going to use Elemental Charge so that every time we pick up the Arc Well, it will also give us 2 stacks of Charge with Light instantaneously. To use those stacks of Charge with Light we just got, we're going to use Protective Light as usual, so that whenever our shields break, all stacks of those Charge with Light will be consumed and provide a 4 times damage resistance buff for 10 seconds. Then finally, to top it all off, we're going to use 2 mods from the artifact. One is Passive Guard to help challenge champions after coming out of invisibility and freeze them with a sword we'll talk about in a few. The other is Focusing Lens, so that our melee will deal an extra 25% more damage to the mob after we freeze them. All of these mods synergize so well together to the point where we're constantly invisible, healing to full HP, providing more damage and stacks of Charge with Light, all the way up to the point where we're practically unkillable. Now let's move over to the fun part of the build and talk about the overall loadout, because I'm going to be breaking down a few things we're going to need to make the damage happen. In the kinetic slot, there are going to be 2 options that will help synergize with the build, and they can be used for champions if the need arises. One is the Cryosthesia Exotic Sidearm, because recently it received a massive buff to it, changing it so that now whenever we get a kill with it, the alt fire is now a toggle reload and able to be held indefinitely, even if we swap to another weapon. This change basically means we have a pocket freeze for any champions anytime we want. Then we can immediately get another kill on a red health enemy right after the Wombo combo just to do it all over again. The other weapon is the exotic auto rifle Monte Carlo, giving melee energy back whenever we shoot enemies, sometimes getting a full melee back whenever we get a kill, and gaining ×5 Markov chain after killing an enemy with our melee. Overall, both options are really good to have for their own uses against mobs or champions. Moving over to the energy slot is where my 1-2 punch shotgun is going to be. This perk is basically the most important thing in the entire build, because whenever we land every pellet in a shot on it, it makes the next melee attack after deal 200% more damage if it's a champion and 350% if it's a boss. I have it rolled on a found verdict from the Vault of Glass with auto-loading holster and 1-2 punch, but you don't have to have the exact roll I'm using or even the exact weapon. Just a shotgun with 1-2 punch will do. Something else that I'll note is that if your 1-2 punch shotgun happens to be in the kinetic slot, like the Wastelander from Dares of Eternity for example, any exotic energy weapon will work with the build, but something like Vex Mythoclast or even Hardlight can better fit the role for the champions. Now moving over to the heavy slot, this is where it's going to be important because what we're going to be using is the Zephyr sword from the Dawning event. The whole reason we use this sword is because 1, it's the only stasis sword in the game, and it's the only sword in the entire game that can roll the perk Cold Steel. This perk is probably one of the most broken sword perks in the game in my opinion, because it freezes enemies after hitting them 3 times. CCing any higher tier mob outside of bosses and opening up for any wombo combo available is absolutely insanity. The one that I've been using in the background footage happens to be rolled with Duelist Trance and Cold Steel, but the curated one that you earn from the Dawning quest will absolutely do perfectly fine. You just realistically need a Zephyr with Cold Steel. Moving over to the armor to get an idea of where everything's gonna go, on my Assassin's Cowl, I have this as Arc with the Well of Ions and a shotgun ammo finder. Then over at my arms, I have these as Void and I'm using Elemental Charge at the end of it with both champion mods that I can change out for whatever activity I'm bringing this into. What I personally like using is Overload Sword and then an Unstoppable Sidearm or Anti-Barrier Auto Rifle depending on if I'm using Monte Carlo or Cryosthesia. Moving over to my chest piece, I also have this as Void and I'm using Melee Wellmaker at the end as a neutral mod and 2 resist mods of my choice. Over at my boots, as per usual in every video that I make, I have these as Void. I'm using Protective Light at the end with a ammo scav of my choice and Better Already so Orbs of Power start instantly healing me. And then finally, over at my cloak, I have it as Solar, but it doesn't really matter because I'm using Passive Guard and Focusing Lens at the same time. And that's going to be the build for the video. Usually this would be the end of the video, but because we're using a 1-2 punch build, let's move over to Cowl and I'll give you guys a demonstration on how to do the combo. Alright guys, here we are over at the Lost Sector down on Nessus. The first thing we're going to do the moment that we enter the Lost Sector, this goes for any Legend or Master Lost Sector you're looking to farm. You want to hit an ad, get Combination Blowstar going. So we got 1 stack, we're in Viz. Dodge, punch again, we now have 2. Dodge again, and we get 3. Now that we have 3, we can actually look towards the champion. I'm just going to refresh my stack real quick. And for this instance, it's going to be Cowl, so I'm going to whip out the sword, dodge real quick to get my melee. 1, 2, 3. He's frozen. Shotgun melee. That's all it takes. As per usual, guys, if you have any questions, feel free to leave them down in the comments and I will get to them as fast as I can. That's going to be it for me, guys. I will catch you all in the next one. Bye-bye.